The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Oh, man, I can't believe this is where we are. But Donald Trump has been caught on a recording during a private event yesterday, implying that the Ukraine whistleblower should be killed, should be executed. It's not just the media that Donald Trump has no respect for. It's also whistleblowers. It's really anyone who doesn't pray at the altar of Trump. And this apparently includes killing people. Donald Trump spoke yesterday to a group of U.S. diplomatic staff in New York City, and it was recorded. The LA Times got their hands on the recording, and Trump implies that whistleblowers should be killed like we used to do with treasonous people. Take a listen to this.
But basically, that person never saw the report, never saw the call, meaning never saw the call, heard something, and decided that he or she, whoever the hell it is, sort of like almost a spy. I want to know who's the person that gave the whistleblower, who's the person that gave the whistleblower the information, because that's close to a spy. You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, right? With spies and treason. Right? We used to handle it a little differently than we do now.
You know what we used to do in the old days to people who commit treason? Donald Trump is talking about killing whistleblowers, and then people in the room laugh. And, you know, I don't know if those are nervous laughs or laughs of agreement. But the president is effectively saying here, I wish I could have Americans who are inconvenient to me politically executed. And there are reports of this recording summarizing it as Trump slams the whistleblower. It's not that Trump is slamming the whistleblower. Donald Trump is suggesting that the whistleblower should be executed. And that is obviously much, much worse. And it's not a surprise. Look at which relationships have failed under Donald Trump and which brutal dictators he is absolutely enamored with. France, Canada, Germany, the UK. Our relationships with those countries, those Western diplomatic, democratic historical allies, our relationships with them are worse than they've been in a very, very long time under Donald Trump. And then on the other hand, Donald Trump is just smitten with Putin and Duterte and Kim Jong-un and Erdogan and, you know, I can't even remember the full list offhand. We've since found out over the last day or so that the whistleblower, by the way, the first whistleblower, there's now news of another whistleblower, an IRS whistleblower, and we'll talk about that on Monday. We've now found out that the Ukraine whistleblower is believed to be a CIA officer who was working at the White House. And as you can imagine, the whistleblower would be at immediate risk if information about them were published. Now, before we even knew that this was a CIA officer, I said, if the whistleblower's identity becomes public, I would be extremely scared to be anywhere in public that Trumpists might be, because that person's life is immediately at risk. But even beyond that, now we know, or it's being reported by the New York Times, that this is a CIA officer. Their identity needs to be protected. Hopefully it will be. The CIA is saying that protecting the identity of the whistleblower is their, quote, highest priority. And I hope that that's the case. I would not be surprised. I hate to even dabble in this, but if by Monday we find out that Donald Trump has tweeted the name or some other information about the whistleblower, if it becomes known to him, it would be disgusting. It would be deplorable. It would be one of the worst things that I can imagine, but it would not be altogether surprising. And we will follow up on this on Monday. We will tell you about the second whistleblower on Monday. And there's so much more going on. I do want to talk, before we move on, about just a sort of addendum story to the entire Ukraine impeachment fiasco, Joe Biden scandal. This is sort of an ancillary story, but it is part of the continuing comedy of errors that the Trump White House continues to be. The Trump White House accidentally sent their talking points on the Ukraine fiasco directly to House Democrats and Nancy Pelosi. And every time that I see a new headline about the entire Ukraine fiasco, I think this one has to be wrong. This one must be from a satirical news website or something. But the headlines are real. There were talking points that the Republicans put together, the Trump White House and with Republicans put together, to fight against House Democrats, who, of course, have since launched an impeachment inquiry against Donald Trump. And they put those documents together, they put those talking points together, and then they sent them directly to Democrats. And this is the funniest thing. But after we do this, I want to talk about the content of the talking points themselves. So they send out the talking points, and it contains a defense of the phone call between Trump and the Ukrainian president, why it was all great, how the real scandal is the leak about the content of the phone call, not the content of the phone call itself. And then shortly thereafter, the White House, realizing its mistake, tries to recall the message through their email system, which, of course, it was too late to do as the ship had sailed and the talking points had been published or were to be published soon thereafter. So more incompetence at the Trump White House, but the content of the talking points is actually the most important thing here. You can tell how weak the hand of Republicans is by their talking points. For example, their defense of the allegation that there's a quid pro quo between Donald Trump's military aid and Ukraine smearing Biden. Their talking point is that the aid package wasn't specifically mentioned in the call. And as we've since found out, the phone call had as a precondition this desire to talk about Joe Biden and the investigation and the eventual smear that they hoped would come. Anyone who knows anything about politics knows that this is not how things work. Trump doesn't personally, on the same call, ask for an investigation into Biden and say, until you do it, I'm not giving you the money. This is not how politics works. This is not how quid pro quo works. This is not how ultimatums work and holding hostage of military aid. And of course, we've since found out that there was already a discussion in advance, and Rudy Giuliani was involved and other people were involved in setting the preconditions for this phone call between Trump and the Ukrainian president to even take place. These talking points that they sent out, as boneheaded as it is to send it directly to Democrats, are talking points that would only even possibly work on the most naive and uninformed follower of politics. You can tell how weak their talking points are because they mention the deep state in their talking points. They say, as a suggested talking point, that this case just shows another example of the deep state, the media, and Democrats in Congress damaging our national security. They're suggesting that Republicans defend Trump. This is a talking point they workshopped, presumably, suggesting that they defend Donald Trump by blaming the deep state. You know your talking points are really weak when you have to raise the deep state conspiracy to show that everything Donald Trump did is okay. And then, of course, maybe just as importantly in all of this is that we've since learned the full scope of the cover-up attempt that existed. Donald Trump ultimately releasing what was initially called a transcript, later actually said, well, this is actually a memo. And really what it was is an extraordinarily small percentage piece of the transcript. And we know that when you have a 30-minute phone call and you put out a 4-page double-spaced memo, you are cutting out a whole bunch of stuff. They made the calculation that that was actually going to paint the conversation in a better light than what the full transcript would do, which should make us question what is in the actual full transcript here. Every single element of this is a combination of complete and utter incompetence, like sending your talking points to House Democrats, and the obviously short-sighted decisions that are being made haphazardly. This will help us more than that other thing happening, not even realizing that they are actually being further damaged, even by, for example, the partial transcript or memorandum that they put out. So look at what has developed in the last 72 hours, and then think for a second, what is going to happen in the next 72? My prediction for the next 72 hours is more details about whistleblower number 2, which involves the IRS. I'm guessing by Monday we will know a lot more about that. I predict another one of these completely erratic, unhinged tweet storms over the weekend by Donald Trump. My prediction is that by Monday morning, we will be able to report to you that Donald Trump has gotten even more involved in everything up to and including obstruction and witness tampering related to this whistleblower or whistleblower number 2. And who knows what else will have happened over the weekend. But certainly by Monday, I predict we will have a lot more to report on here, as well as the increased support for the impeachment of Donald Trump among the American public. I already saw one poll about that this morning, and my prediction is by Monday, we will have even more. So I'm glad you're with us today. We have so much to discuss, so much to talk about. Make sure you're following me on Twitter, at dpacman. Make sure you follow The David Pakman Show on Twitter, at David Pakman Show. And of course, do not miss my Twitch live streams at twitch.tv/David Pakman. If you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you can subscribe to me on Twitch Prime for free. It costs you nothing. It counts as a paid subscription for us at twitch.tv/David Pakman. We will take a very quick break and be back with so much more, including more impeachment discussion, whistleblower discussion, 2020 discussion, and so much more.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new members of the day are Cameron Alm and Paul Abisher. Cameron and Paul, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. Membership is our primary funding source and the way to get us the highest percentage of your contributions. We pay only 2.9% to process credit and debit cards when you sign up on our website. 2.9% is way less than what any other donation platform will charge. Also want to say thanks to Meredith Whistler, who is today's longtime sustaining member of the day. Join all of these great people at www.joinpakman.com. Let's take some phone calls at 617-830-4750. A lot of folks wanting to talk about many things, including presumably at least some, the news of the day. Let's start today with our caller from the 301 area code. Who's calling today from 301?
Hi, David. This is LaBelle from Pittsburgh. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing very good. Doing good. I just wanted to ask you about, there's a new batch of polls that were released today. Did you see the Quinnipiac and the YouGov poll?
So I don't remember which poll said what, but I know that over the last couple of days, there's one poll which has Elizabeth Warren ahead nationally. I'm wondering if that's one of the ones you're referring to. There's another poll which has Andrew Yang polling 8%. I think that's the Emerson poll. So yes, I've generally been keeping up with them.
Gotcha. Yeah, like the Quinnipiac, it had Warren at 27, Biden 25, and the YouGov, it was, among the likely voters, it was 25 for both Biden and Warren.
Yeah.
And I mostly highlight, I didn't get to see the breakdown for YouGov, but for the Quinnipiac poll, I saw with Warren in July of this year, she had 4% of the black vote, Biden 53, and then now it says she has 19% of the black vote, Biden about 40. And yeah, so I mean, it just made my eyes pop up because, especially for me, because I'm a black millennial and I would want Warren to win. I don't want Biden to get into the White House. And so I just had just a couple questions with that. Do you see, is there like a floor that you think Warren would need to comfortably win the nomination like among black support? And just assuming that, as a hypothetical, that she didn't catch up with Biden in terms of the black vote or surpassed him, but she won a majority of the early states such as Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. Could you see an Obama-Hillary type situation where the black support swings her way?
I'd have to look more deeply at the numbers. I think that Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, listen, I think any of these candidates could win the nomination without a majority of the black vote, if that's what you're asking. I don't think they need a majority of the black vote necessarily. But I think certainly we want to be paying attention to, are there certain groups with which a particular candidate is or is not doing well, and what would the reasons for that be? But I'd have to, I don't know what the floor would be of, like, I wouldn't be prepared to say if Elizabeth Warren doesn't get X% of the black vote, she can't win the nomination. That number probably exists. I just don't know what it would be.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, like that definitely makes sense, especially since I didn't totally expect you to have an answer for that, just because again it was just released, today.
Yes, well, we
So
will be looking at it
yeah,
in
I'll just
significant detail, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Lavelle from Pittsburgh, great to hear from you today. I do appreciate the phone call. Let's go next to, where do we want to go? Let's go to our caller from the 925 area code. Who's calling today from 925?
Hi, is it me?
Yeah, that's you.
Hi, David. I'm a huge fan of the show. I just wanted to ask you about, again, the impeachment process. Right now, with the release of the transcript, there seems to be clearly enough evidence for impeachment, but the vibe I'm getting from Republicans is they see this as an absolute win. They know that impeachment has horrible approval rating. I think it's around 30%. I'm not sure, and they think it'll help them in 2020.
Yeah.
It seems that both sides are assuming this is a win for them, and it seems that there's going to be one clear winner and loser. I'm just going to ask, based on this, do you see this as hurting the Democrats in 2020 or helping them?
So my commentary this week has been that it depends on what actually happens, and it's basically three different things. Number one, what information that was previously unknown to the general public is revealed through the impeachment inquiry process? That's question number one. Question number two, does Donald Trump successfully turn himself into the victim, martyr, whatever phrase you want to use, because that would absolutely embolden Trump? And then the other thing I think is important, I don't know where you're getting the number that only 30% of Americans are in favor of impeachment. Last I looked, more than half of the country was in favor of an impeachment inquiry. I've not seen any evidence to suggest that's changed.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Yeah, that was my question. Thank you for asking.
I'm curious though, where did you get that 30% of the country supports impeachment?
I got it from The Hill. They just put out a video today about it, I think, and they mentioned it's around 30 to 35%, I think.
Okay, I'll check that out. Yeah, the polls I had
accuracy
seen
of
were
that.
above 50%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go next to our caller from the 631 area code. Who's calling today from 631?
I think that's me. Am I on?
Yes, who's this?
Hi, my name's Art. Wow, I actually didn't think I'd actually have the chance to come on. I've been trying for a while.
Here you are.
I'm a big fan of the show, yeah. All right. So, word this right. My question is, it is sort of a pattern I'm sort of seeing from, not all, but a good number of people from the Republican Party, is that a lot of them are asking the question of doing the right thing, whether do I do what's good for me? And through that, I think they've sort of developed this, or at least forgotten the difference between being tough and being callous towards certain people and certain issues. Do you see what I'm getting at here?
Only sort of. Can you explain it to me in another way?
Okay, well, a lot of the whole people, the Trump administration says, we got to be tough on crime. We got to be tough on immigrants. We got to be tough on drugs, tough on all this stuff. But they don't know that they can't separate that toughness from being just completely indifferent from the suffering of others. The reason I am the way I am now is because I was taught to always empathize with people. Not maybe to a certain point, but do you think somehow a lot of the people now with him and his base just completely lost all sense of empathy, or at least
this is not a new thing. This is not a new thing. Listen, I'm going to let you go and answer it offline because your connection is not the best right now. You're cutting in and out. But I've been talking about this for a long time. When a Republican has a personal connection to something, they will often come around, like when they have a gay relative, for example. And when that happens, we're happy. But at the same time, it's disappointing and disheartening that only when it personally affects them do they actually reconsider how other people are being affected by the policies that they push. So yeah, you've identified something that is an absolute reality, and I don't believe that it is unfortunately new to Donald Trump. Hope to hear from you again, hopefully with a better connection next time. Let's go to our caller from the 912 area code. Who's calling today from 912?
Hello, David. I'm Sebastian from Savannah. I read this article on Vox from Zach Beauchamp about his change of mind on impeachment. He stated that his inquiry is about what is happening currently and in the future 2020 election. This impeachment is about what he's doing right now. The previous calls for impeachment were for the Mueller probe were about previous actions and did not merit impeachment. I know your take on this is different, but it is quite compelling for me for the justification of impeachment now. Thank you for taking my call, David.
Sorry, so whose opinion is this? Are you reading someone else's opinion? I didn't hear who it was.
Yeah. This is an opinion from Zach Beauchamp from Vox.
Okay. All right. And he says that this is different than previous calls for impeachment because it's about Trump's current actions rather than previous actions.
Exactly. He says that because this is happening right now and it's right in front of us, and we have the evidence right in front of us that we do have impeachment. And to me, it is a pretty justification for impeachment because of
there's no question. I mean, listen, you need the inquiry to explore whether an impeachment trial is the right next step, and then the Senate needs to vote. So I think you are 100% right, or Mr. Zach Beauchamp is right in pointing out that this relates to something that is now. Like this it's been the last 3 months that this Ukraine stuff has been going on. That doesn't give us the answer as to whether it is something the president should be removed from office for. That's why we're starting this process. But I agree that that's a key difference from the Mueller stuff, which was trying to figure out what took place back in 2015 and 2016.
Yeah, and I understood your take on both your original opinion on this new impeachment, and I knew that this would be a little bit different.
But this is the only impeachment inquiry, right? I mean,
the calls for impeachment, I remember, how Democrats were trying to say, they wanted impeachment because of the Mueller probe, and you were saying that's not going to happen. Yeah, there's no way it's going to happen. But with this is completely different.
All right, Sebastian, point well made. I appreciate you making it, and I hope to hear from you again in the future. Let's go to our caller from the 626 area code. Who's calling today from 626?
Hello?
Yes, that's you.
Hello?
Yes, that's you.
Yeah, hello, Dave. My name is Steve. I'm from Azusa.
Hey, Steve.
California. Yeah, I'm a new listener. My question, I had a couple of them. Basically, with the Senate being the way they are, even with this impeachment going to that point, they're not going to vote for it. So, I mean, isn't this basically just an election type of move?
That's exactly right.
The Democrats, and why don't the Democrats play a little bit tougher? I mean, I was just watching on MSNBC and CNN how Trump has just got so much bad stuff in his past.
But hold on a second. Let's go through this. Let's think this through, Steve. When you say, why can't Democrats be tougher, what do you mean? What do you want them to do?
Oh, no, I don't want him to do anything. I'm just saying he is so just outright dirty about everything, lying and everything. And why don't the Democrats, they don't have to lie, but they need to expose these lies and play on them more instead of just giving a little bit of airtime and then letting it go.
Listen, I don't agree with you in the sense that just pointing out that Donald Trump lies has not been very effective, because Donald Trump has emptied a lot of that by saying, hey, it's all fake news. He's done a really good job of that. So whenever we say, hey, look, here's 5 things Trump lied about, his supporters don't care. So my hope is that the impeachment inquiry, if it's carried out correctly, will expose the country not to Trump lied, because he lies all the time and that's not moving the needle. But this is a person who is a systemic danger to the country, and you should vote for someone else in November of 2020. That's the hope. I don't know that it will happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm hoping, Dave. It just seems that they're just so blind to people on the right that this is so ridiculous. I couldn't believe another 4 years if it does happen.
Yep, and it may well, sadly, Steve.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Hey, the other thing, David, what do you think about climate change and the way that we're racing toward extinction? And it's almost as if, once again, fossil fuels, I mean, they kill so many people, just all these different things that are bad, and yet they're getting pushed forward. And the things they're just saying, oh, it costs too much to do this. It costs too much. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different questions in there, but you know, this is obviously one of the foremost. This is one of the top 3 issues of our time, and you know, we've talked a lot about it, and it's extraordinarily disheartening what's going on. Steve, great to hear from you. I hope to hear from you again. Let me take a quick break, but if you're holding on to talk to me, don't hang up, because I will go right back to the phones after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
All right, let's go back to the phones at 617-830-4750. We will talk to our caller from the 215 area code. 215, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, David. This is Jeray from Philadelphia.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So my question isn't about impeachment, but it's a little bit more about education.
All right.
So a few weeks ago, I think you had a caller call in about, you know, how he thinks prereqs and humanitarian classes maybe should be eliminated. And I agree that I think we do need them as a society to better understand each other and be more empathetic, as the previous caller had alluded. My question is, what are your thoughts on the fact that everything is becoming like doctoral prepared? So I think that that's like contributing to the loan crisis. So like a physical therapist, an occupational therapist has to now go back and be a doctorate. Like, do you think that that is something that we should be striving towards? Like, I don't think
I'm not aware of that. So hold on. Let me see if you're saying that occupational therapists have to be doctors now. I'm just not familiar enough with what you're saying.
Yes. So in the medical field, so I'm a nurse and I'm currently in my final year. I'm going to be a nurse practitioner next year. And I'm getting my master's. But the big push is that they want me to get my DNP instead of my MSN. So it would be that I would be a doctorate of nursing practice versus just having my master's, which my scope of practice does not change regardless of me having either credential. It's the same for occupational therapy, physical therapists, speech therapists. They all now have to get doctorate of practice in their respective fields.
So let me ask you this. I hate to be this cynical, but does that allow a higher reimbursement rate from insurance? Like, where my mind goes is this about money more than anything else?
That is a great question, and I do not know the question in terms of reimbursement. From a nursing standpoint, it's state driven. So like in Pennsylvania, I can practice independently, but I still need a doctor to oversee, my practice.
Yeah.
But but nurse practitioners as a whole are reimbursed at, say, 87%. I don't know the exact numbers, 87% versus a doctor, 95% based on insurance companies. And I'm almost certain that it doesn't matter if you have your DNP versus your MSN.
Okay, because I mean, listen, I don't know enough about it to say too much more, but when I hear about a push for a more involved degree in order to see patients, where my mind goes is that probably is more profitable for the place you're working at.
Gotcha. Yes, that is true. And do you think that it's also related to colleges wanting to make more money by forcing us to always get more and more degrees?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the incentive is certainly there. I don't want to, it sounds reasonable. I just don't want to say for sure because I'm just not familiar enough with the specifics of what you're asking about, but it certainly would not surprise me that that's the case.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Let's go to Nathan. It's been a little while since we heard from Nathan in 717. What's going on, Nathan?
Thank you for taking my call, David.
Yes.
I was wondering if you well, I'm sure you definitely heard about Greta Thunberg is her name, I believe.
Yes.
Let me close that door real fast.
Hold on, are you playing music in the background?
My sister is playing her violin.
Oh, okay.
So did you see the segment that was on Fox News where the Daily Wire host Michael Knowles talked about Greta and he called her mentally ill?
Yes, I did, and I guess he's kicked off of Fox News now.
Yeah, which I think was a good move by them. But it just made me think, like, why why then did they decide to kick someone off? Like like Laura Ingraham still has a show. A lot of these people still have shows.
Right. Laura Ingraham could have been kicked out years ago for any number of things that she did. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I think it's so when you call a kid.
Why was that the catalyst?
When you call a kid who's autistic mentally ill, that does even. There's a line no matter where you are. The line is different on Fox News than elsewhere, and it crossed Fox's line. But you're completely right. I mean, arguably, when Tucker Carlson said immigrants make us dirtier and poorer or whatever, like he could have been kicked off for that. The other thing is Michael Knowles is not an employee, or I mean, maybe he was a contributor, which I don't know if that's an employee or an independent contractor, but he's not like a host. So it's also probably a lower bar. Like you get rid of them. If he was a host, maybe he just gets sent on a mandatory 2-week vacation or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I don't understand why. I think it'd be interesting if they brought you on the show sometime, if it was you and Michael sometime. That'd just be really funny to see.
Yeah, it's funny. It was recently brought to me. I recently received a proposal from my agent about doing something with Michael Knowles, and we both were like, yeah, there's no upside to this, interestingly enough.
You sure? I mean,
I don't know. Maybe you're making a point.
I used to be a fan of him when I was on the right wing, so I mean, I definitely back then would have liked to hear your opinion. So yeah. I mean, I for one would love to see you talk to Michael.
Interesting. All right, well, I'll take that under advisement. How long has your sister been playing violin, Nathan?
All my brothers and sisters play violin. We've been playing probably for 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
Different times.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. I will let you get back to her practice. I appreciate the call. Okay. I guess Nathan's already gone. Thank you. All right. Let's go next. So many people holding. It's hard to know where to go. Let's try the 506 area code. Who's calling today from 506?
Hello. Is this me?
Yes, it is. Who's this?
Oh, nice. My name is Julian from Costa Rica. I had a question related to your conversation with Sam Harris that you had recently.
Sure.
I was wondering if you were convinced by what Sam claims is a distinction between jihadists and white supremacists acting based on their beliefs. For instance, him claiming that white supremacists emerge from a more alienating psychopathological conditions instead of being warranted by, just average day Joes falling to an attachment to these kinds of ideological beliefs. And Sam claiming that one important factor that makes this discrepancy non-hypocritical is the otherworldly, you'll get everything you want after you die factor. And him claiming that there is some unknown chasm in the trolling, posting, propagandistic narrative that white supremacists try to get the media spinning or something like that. But it seems that the same argument could be made for the kind of propaganda that jihadists engage in.
Yeah, I was not convinced. Sure I think I got it. I was not convinced by his argument. Listen, when I hear a jihadist explain what motivates them and I hear a white supremacist explain what motivates them, I presume the same amount of a genuine statement from both of them, barring some particular reason to think otherwise, and no reason to think otherwise has been presented. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have, in a plurality of cases, different circumstances that push someone over the edge to the point at which they commit real-world violence. But no, I did not find what Sam Harris said. It didn't change my mind, so to speak.
Right, because it seemed to me that him saying, listen, it's not very known why these white supremacists do what they do, and then they're connected to sites like 4chan, and it's just all a troll in his mind in some cases. But I've never seen him make that claim for jihadists. I've never seen him claim that jihadists are potentially trolling and they're just trying to get, U.S. media crazy because they hate Western power so much.
And I called it. I mean, I called that as I saw it. I said to him that I don't see that. I think the other thing is that's being ignored. Imagine that it was proven that when a white supremacist let me back up. Imagine that it was proven that when we hear a claim that someone who committed a mass violence action was a white supremacist, and we figured out, you know what? They weren't really motivated by white supremacy. It was just convenient. It would, or a troll. It would still be important to answer the question, why are so many people who aren't really white supremacists going out there and committing violence and then claiming that white supremacy was the explanation? Like, that would still be an incredibly relevant and important thing to answer in society.
Right. I agree. And I would really appreciate it if you had another conversation with Sam and try to clear the air on this topic.
I don't know that we need to clear the air. I mean, it was made clear during our conversation that we didn't agree. I don't know how soon he's going to want to do another interview with me, but I'm glad to have him back on in the future.
All right. Thank you very much, David. You have a very capacious mind. Love the show. And I was surprised to hear your Argentinian accent. I didn't discern it at all from you speaking English. It's pretty cool, man. I have a bunch of Argentinian friends down here, so you should come visit one day.
Yeah, I would love to go to Costa Rica. I heard that the place to go is, you'll know the geography better than I would. There is a peninsula on the Pacific side. What's the name of that peninsula?
I'm not sure. I can list some that could potentially be it. Have you heard maybe of Tamarindo, Guanacaste?
Exactly.
Jaco,
it's the area that has Tamarindo, and also I think Punta Arenas might be it. And that entire area, I have friends who go there regularly. The thing is, they've got to take 2 flights to get there. Like from Boston, you've got to go somewhere and then to the capital, and then you've got to get an additional small plane. So it's like all day, you know?
Right. I would just caution you when you come, just be on the, well, actually, you won't really have this problem because you speak Spanish, but foreigners are oftentimes overcharged for the same services, which is not really unusual in foreign countries, but or in any country for that matter.
Right. Well, certainly I will be negotiating in Spanish
David.
with everybody. Okay. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Great to hear from you. First call we've gotten from Costa Rica. I love it. All right. Let's go to our caller from the 519 area code. Who's calling today from 519?
Hi, David. This is Jesse.
Hey, Jesse. What's going on?
Not too much. I'm a huge fan of your show, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
I just have 2 questions for you. The one is, do you think the left is giving their power away by not giving enough empathy to people on the right, maybe even Donald Trump, you know, kind of dehumanizing him and being sort of vicious and losing sight of, you know, the fact that he's just a person? And B,
I don't know. Well, hold on. Let's take it one at a time. How is the left dehumanizing Trump? I see a lot more dehumanization coming from Trump than to Trump.
Oh, absolutely. So what I'm saying, like, I'm a progressive, and that's one of the reasons why I've watched your show, because you're very balanced in your judgments, but you also are kind of a lefty like myself, it seems like. So what I'm saying is, even though we have people who do terrible things, at the end of the day, when we stop treating them like people and start treating them like monsters, it almost gives them more power in a sense. Would you agree with that?
I think that there are circumstances in which that's true, yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of leads into my second question is, do you think the left and some of the public speakers on the left, like even or talk show hosts and what have you, like Stephen Colbert, evangelize Trump's brand more than they take him down in a sense?
You mean inadvertently?
Yeah. So I noticed that ever since Donald Trump started running for presidency, Stephen Colbert can't help but discuss Trump. And this seems like a widespread thing on the left.
Yeah.
And my concern, I live in Canada, by the way, so I'm just kind of watching everything unfold. My concern is that by always focusing on him, making him a monster, not kind of bringing him down to a human level, and if they don't stop talking about him, they're actually evangelizing.
I don't know. I mean, listen, you can make the case that if media literally pays no attention to someone, that person becomes no one because they go away. Trump is the president of the United States. He would still be doing things even if people didn't pay attention, and people wouldn't be aware of the things that he is doing, which are objectively bad. So I understand the point you're trying to make. I think it's more about finding a balance. But no, I have no particular reason to think that someone like Stephen Colbert is actually evangelizing for Trumpism.
Okay. Well, Dave, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
All right, Jesse, appreciate the phone call. Thank you so much. Let's pick up on our caller from the 425 area code. Who's calling today from 425?
Hey, David. This is Herb Kidder from Everett, Washington.
How are you?
Hello. I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Well, my main question is, everybody's been paying attention to the fact that he withheld the $400 million before he called the Ukrainian president to demand some investigations into Joe Biden and his son. But at the end of this supposed transcript, which is just a memorandum of notes of the phone call, was released, he issued a not so veiled threat, which said, "You have many assets." He said, "You have many assets. I have many friends in Ukraine." I mean, it's like basically coming out and saying, if you don't comply, we'll freeze your assets. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed that the press has been completely ignoring
listen, it's still early and we're still going through it. But listen, there is no question that that phone call was the culmination of something that had started long before. So you have, as I said, you have to go into it understanding that it's not going to be one phone call. Even if we had a word-for-word transcript, it would not tell the entire picture, number one. And there would be all sorts of references to things that we would not fully understand because there is so much lead up to it. So, of course, listen, it's exactly what we predicted. Hello?
Oh.
Hello? Okay. I guess we lost him. All right. That does it for phone calls for today. I do apologize to everybody I didn't get to, but I will be streaming on Twitch tonight if you want another opportunity to call in, twitch.tv/David Pakman. We will take a quick break and be back with more right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
All right, let's get into audience questions for the week. Here's the first one. Hey, David, why do you keep saying you're Hispanic? It seems like obvious BS. Please stop saying that. So this is an ongoing thing. According to the United States Census, as an immigrant from Argentina who came to the United States and learned English when I got here, the U.S. Census Bureau says that I am indeed Hispanic or Latino. Hispanic or Latino is a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Central or South American descent, or other Spanish culture or origin, regardless of race. Okay? So a Hispanic or Latino person can be of any race, of any ancestry, any ethnicity that speaks Spanish or Portuguese from these countries that are listed. That is me, okay? Now, there's no question that because my ethnicity is Ashkenazi Jewish, and I moved to the United States young enough to be speaking English mostly without an accent, except for some random words that some in the audience are acquainted with, I am not ignorant to the reality that my experience as an adult in the United States, once I learned English in the United States, is effectively that of a white American with whatever degree of privilege that affords me. And whatever your belief is about white privilege, that's not what the argument is about. Whatever degree you believe exists, and it would be a little weird to think that there is no degree of white privilege, I understand that I have that. It is conferred to me by virtue of having come to the United States early enough to speak English without an accent. And because of the way I look, I'm not identified as Hispanic. But as far as the census is concerned, I am Hispanic. And of course, I was raised in Hispanic culture, and I still, of course, have family in Argentina and spend time there and identify with all of the things that are implicit in that. So, you know, when I talk about on the show in the context of the immigration debate or whatever, and I talk about being Hispanic, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek in the sense that, I mean, listen, my view is primarily informed by being, an educated person in the United States who has empathy and cares about economics and national security and treating people with dignity. And the reality is that, according to the census, being Hispanic is not the primary lens through which I am seeing these issues, at least not in a conscious way. But it's not BS. And it's funny. There's people in the audience who think that the idea of me being Hispanic is BS. And there's a contingent of patriots in the audience that regularly attack me in anti-Hispanic ways with the slurs that you often hear about Central and South Americans and with go back to, Argentina type of stuff. In any case, yeah, I am Hispanic according to the census. My culture is a mix of South American, Argentinian, and cultural Judaism, and just growing up in the Northeast. And interestingly enough, a lot of my culture is more a metropolitan city culture than anything else, which is often much more similar between countries than the culture often is between rural and urban areas within the United States. But that's probably a conversation for a different day. Tony wrote in. Tony says, hey, David, which drugs do you think should be legalized or decriminalized? So number one, it's good that you're making the distinction between legalized and decriminalized, because legalization and decriminalization are very different things. And also it's important to distinguish between trafficking and personal use. Okay, so let's go in order. All drug use and drug possession for personal amounts should be decriminalized, period. Legalization, absolutely, for marijuana. And for other drugs, I'm open to discussion. I believe it's Denver that's testing legalizing mushrooms, as an example. I have less of a fixed opinion about the legalization of some drugs. I've not seen good reasons to legalize recreational cocaine or heroin, for example. I'm very clear that possessing cocaine or heroin for personal use should not be a crime. Using cocaine or heroin should not be a crime. But the recreational legalization of cocaine and heroin, I've not seen a good argument for that, and I'm willing to have my mind changed. Now, this gets us to a really important element of this debate that a lot of people miss. A lot of people seem not to understand that when you talk about legalization or decriminalization of any drug, you're not talking about it being legal to be trafficking in those drugs. 10 pounds of marijuana or a kilo of coke or whatever, whether you decriminalize or legalize, that is likely still going to be criminal. And when you think about it, alcohol is legal recreationally. Cigarettes are legal recreationally. It is still against the law to traffic in alcohol or cigarettes without doing it, on the record as a business in the way that the guidelines say that you should. You can have that debate, and I'm glad to have it. But it's important to understand, and I think that there are a lot of bad faith actors on the anti-decriminalization, anti-legalization, tends to be the political right in the United States, who either are misunderstanding or they are deliberately conflating the decriminalization or legalization of the trafficking of drugs versus legalization and decriminalization of amounts for personal use. And these are very, very different conversations. So my question to you today is, what is the strongest argument for recreational legalization of drugs like cocaine and heroin? I am 110% on board with marijuana. I would sooner make cigarettes illegal than say that marijuana should remain criminal for use and possession. But I simply have not seen a good case made for why there should be recreationally legal cocaine or heroin. But if you've got a good argument to make along those lines, by all means, get in touch and then we can talk about it. Last question today. Hey, David, do you believe that Medicare for all should cover elective cosmetic and plastic surgery? So I'm going to answer the question as asked, but then I'm going to tell you that there's a major problem with this question. So during the debates, I often implore the Democratic candidates to immediately call out questions as problematic when they are, rather than answering them as asked. This is my show, so I'll do it in the opposite way. I'm telling you the question is a problem, but first I'll answer it as asked. The term elective is the complicating factor here. It's pretty widely accepted that cheek implants or breast implants for medically unnecessary elective cosmetic reasons would not be covered by Medicare for all. That you find very little disagreement with that. Now, the counter argument would be, you know, some of these things are medically unnecessary, but someone's appearance is causing them emotional distress. Their nose is causing them emotional distress, and they're in therapy because of their nose, and it should be covered for that reason. It's not the most convincing argument to me, but that is an argument that is sometimes made. Then you get to, well, what about cosmetic surgery that's the result of injury or illness? And most people say that that should be covered by Medicare for all, and I completely agree. When you get to elective, it can get pretty complicated. There can be lots of things that are not medically necessary as typically defined, but they're not mere vanity. And the question then becomes, where do we draw the line at elective? If you need breast reconstruction from breast cancer, that's a definitive yes. If you want breast implants for vanity, typically that's a definitive no. But what about something like breast lift surgery for a post-pregnancy condition that is not life-threatening, and it's a mix of medically suggested and for physical appearance? I don't know. I mean, I lean to it should be covered, but these are the sort of middle-of-the-road cases that end up becoming a debate. But now, okay, put all of that aside. Here's the real analysis. This is a complete red herring used to distract from the reality that people already now are foregoing tons of medically necessary and preventive maintenance type procedures, getting things looked at before they become serious because of the system that we have. And we already have private insurers making decisions about what is and isn't covered. So the problem I have with this question about whether or not elective cosmetic surgery would be covered under Medicare for all is that it's an attempt to attack Medicare for all by saying either, wow, you would cover cosmetic surgery? That's crazy. My taxes shouldn't pay for your nose job. Or, oh, you won't cover it? Well, it's not really universal coverage, is it? And this is the game we shouldn't be drawn into. It's a complete distraction. I'm more than glad to have the conversation here on the show because I'm answering your questions and telling you what I think. But this is a complete and total distraction from the fact that even if these questions about cosmetic surgery remain, countless other issues are resolved by Medicare for all, and we already have the same type of issues that people are describing about edge case, middle of the road, elective cosmetic surgery. So don't allow yourself to fall for what is, quite frankly, a distraction from the real debate as to what kind of healthcare system we should have in the United States. That does it for questions today. Send yours in. Tweet them to me at @dpacman. Send them to me with the subject line audience questions by using the contact form at davidpacman.com. I'll answer 3 more next week. And make sure to join me on the bonus show today. Become a member at joinpacman.com or a patron at patreon.com/davidpacmanshow to get instant access to the bonus show, which is coming up right after this.
The David Pacman Show at davidpacman.com.